writing of the story is really top notch. As spoiler free as I can get, I am strongly recommending Echo. Even if you're not interested in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I think you can watch Echo by itself and appreciate what a good piece of storytelling it is.
Why? It's
Welcome to Why It's Straight Television. I'm your host, Matthew Salanoa, a filmmaker of over 17 years, here to bring you the filmmaker's perspective on television. Aloha, nerds, and welcome to Why It's Great Television. Today, I'm very excited to talk about Echo. Now, I'm very behind on a lot of movies and television because I am behind on all the new stuff. I decided to go back and check out Echo because I kept hearing good things about it. My nerd brother, one of my best friends in life, he and my sister both really enjoyed Echo, and they kept telling me, "You got to watch it. You got to watch it. You got to watch it." And I was very resistant because a number of Marvel's Disney Plus shows I felt didn't work for me. I was not a big fan of She-Hulk or the Hawkeye show. I felt, and even Falcon and the Winter Soldier, the first time I watched it, I wasn't into it. I just felt the story didn't go where I personally was interested in the story going. And so I think that was half of the reason I was against a lot of it. I'm not a Marvel hater, though, in terms of the MCU. Look, I don't know the comic books, but I grew up on the cartoons, and that's why I always show up for the movies. But then when I show up for these shows, and especially with Hawkeye and She-Hulk, I was just very disappointed in the fact that the stories, they would take personal dives, but you kind of feel like the female character is showing up at the expense of the male character, as opposed to there being a really good story there to motivate why this character is being introduced into the MCU. And that's more my problem. I'm not one of these people who calls it the MCU because deep down I'm sexist and I just want to see Arnold Schwarzenegger's pecs again. I like female heroes. I grew up on Hercules and Xena. I grew up on Superman and Lois. I grew up on Meteor Man, Blank Man, and Tank Girl. You know what I mean? I didn't have this weird hang up that a lot of podcasters have where I can't watch it because there's a girl involved. I mean, I think you got deeper issues if that's what your problem is. Okay, I don't care, like, if it's, I liked Ray in episode 7. I just didn't care for her in episode 9. You know what I mean? I thought there's something, the actress has it. It's not the actor's fault that she's female or the lead. It's just the storytelling and what the story is that really matters. But that being said, I do have a Daredevil Born Again review. I did the whole season in review, just like I'm doing. This is going to be a whole season review of Echo. But I decided to start off with Echo because I'm very excited about how good this show is. Alaqua Cox, I hope I'm saying her name right. She is Echo. She appears in the Hawkeye show, and she wasn't a bad part of the show. I don't have any problem with seeing some strong women show up and kick some butt. Again, I grew up on Hercules and Xena was actually the better show. But don't tell Kevin Sorbo I said that because I really want to meet him. Okay, that's between you and me. Don't tell Kevin Sorbo I said that. But I have to say, like, Alaqua, I hope I'm saying this name, Alaqua Cox. She's fantastic. She was good. I didn't have a problem with her character in Hawkeye. I thought the character was good. I just felt that it would have been nice for, if you're going to have all this baggage that Hawkeye, the original Jeremy Renner Hawkeye, is going to carry, I would actually like to see some of his story and how it actually folds with these other characters, rather than this thing that I know it's budget, but I do blame the writers to a certain extent, because there is a way to do show and not tell. And I just felt the biggest problem for me with the Hawkeye show was there was a lot of telling and not a lot of showing. We did get the one flashback of Ronin from Echo's perspective, where she sees Ronin killing a bunch of guys, but it's very unclear as to what Ronin was doing there. I think even after it being explained, I'm like, so were you working for Kingpin? I still don't fully know what was going on there. And I don't know if they're leaving that out because they didn't actually know themselves or what. But I'm like, look, the show's called Hawkeye. There are legitimate fans of the Hawkeye character that you're just not servicing to force, Haley Steinfeld's character in the story. And her character, I'm sorry, there's not enough dramatic material there just because you put Vera Farmiga as her mother. There's not enough real dramatic material there to carry the weight of the show. That was the same problem with the She-Hulk show. And part of the MCU complaints is that She-Hulk shows up and I am woman and I'm just better than you because I'm woman. And first of all, no one wants to hear that in the first place. It doesn't matter, you know what I mean? But if we're supposed to live in an age of, your character is supposed to matter more than your gender or your skin color, that's the absolute worst way to try and get your audience into the story. Okay, it's like, I get it. You are angry at 80s movies where women had to be rescued all the time. But you know what? This is not a good way to start off what is a beloved comic book character. You have to have a good story. That's why we're supposed to be invested in the first place. It's okay to talk modern women issues and sort of the modern woman perspective, or at least your perspective as a woman telling the story. The creator of She-Hulk, she did come from Rick and Morty and wrote one of the absolute best episodes of all time, the Pickle Rick episode. So talent's not an issue. I know that it was budget, and I know there was just a stretching of the attention and budget of Marvel because of this obsessive need with putting out as much content as humanly possible. Where it's like, look, the content still actually has to be good. So I don't really blame the creators. I do think they themselves got shortchanged, and they were told to make a She-Hulk show where they could only afford to have She-Hulk on for 5 seconds an episode. And it's just like, how is someone supposed to make a good show like that when you're being told something different every week? But nonetheless, not that it's the women's shows entirely, but I do feel like this was a lot of why I stayed away from Echo, because I just had a lot of like, look, even Falcon and the Winter Soldier, I didn't quite feel the first time around. But again, my nerd brother said, no, don't worry about not liking this show. Don't worry about not liking that show. Check out Echo. It's really, really good. And so after after now years, I went back and checked out Echo because what happened was I started watching Daredevil Born Again, and I'm watching Kingpin not have a wound on his eye. And I'm like, were you not shot in the face the last time I saw you, Kingpin? And because that's how Hawkeye ends. Hawkeye ends with Echo learning that Kingpin had, in whatever way he did, influenced Ronin to kill Echo's father. And so, even though, hey, he did do the killing, it was all because of Kingpin's influence. This is what Kingpin wanted. Once Echo learns that and learns the full truth of it, that's when she goes after Kingpin and, spoiler alert, shoots him right in the eyeball. So because of that huge confusion, I'm like, wait, I really feel like I'm missing something. Shouldn't he have an eye patch at least if he somehow survived that? So because I started Daredevil Born Again first, I was like, wait a second. I need to understand why. Why do you have vision? Why do you have full use of your eyeball? So I went back to watch Echo. I had already seen the first episode, and I think just like Born Again, I think you can tell that there was 2 shows being shot. Echo also has the baggage of, apparently they were shooting the show a particular kind of way, And then they realize this is not the show the audience really needs, and it's not the story that we want to tell. And we need to back up and make the show we feel like we should make. And so, first episode of both Born Again and Echo, they're very hypercut. There's a lot going on. I can tell that there's an overlapping of two types of shows, and which for me, it's like it's so blatant that it's there. You know, it's just it bugged me out, and that's what checked me out of Echo in the first place. I was like, whoa, 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 what's pick your lane here. We're kind of just the first episode of Echo. The first time I watched it, it powers through her origin story, which also shows us some recap footage from the Hawkeye show. And because it powers through all of that, it really took me out of it. Because actually, the first episode starts off with this beautiful flashback. I guess, I don't know if it's the actual Native American origin or if it's from the comic book. But this character, Chafa, you see, like the original Native Americans were these clay people in this opening scene. And they lived in a cave, and all of a sudden the cave collapses on them. But this character, Shafa, in this instant develops a miraculous ability to teleport herself and her people onto the earth and out of the cave and onto land. And that's when the clay falls off of them. And it's such a beautiful, awesome sequence. And here the show is taking its time. And then we get to see young Echo as a kid and her family. And I'm totally feeling this stuff. It's just that all of a sudden, suddenly her mom dies with her in the car, and then we see the origin of her leg being chopped off, and it's a horrible car accident and a very sad opening. Then we get into, okay, this kind of referred to drama that Echo's dad is tied in with bad people, and he's essentially being exiled from the reservation because they're all Native Americans living on the reservation. So he's being exiled from his own family because the reason the mother died is because he's tied up with bad people. And so he goes to New York, and that's when we see young Echo start to take lessons in martial arts. And that's when all of a sudden the show kind of hypercuts and plows through her martial arts experiences, plows through the flashbacks that we see in Hawkeye, and it just feels like way too loose. Like, what is going on here on the first watch? But going back to watch it the second time, it still feels a bit hypercut, but also it does feel like a Marvel comic book. In a real Marvel comic, when you read it, they will plow through those flashback things so fast just to kind of get your character to the moment that the issue started in. So it's not unnatural. I think the beautiful thing about the MCU is that when it's done well, it moves like a Marvel comic. Again, now for those of you who also were like me and you stayed away from Echo because you heard mixed things, or you're afraid of the MCU, which I think is just ridiculous. I think people are mind controlling you to feel that way, and you need to realize that that's what's going on and let it go. Echo is an excellent show, especially from episodes 2 through 5, where the storytelling becomes smooth. Whatever it is that they were trying to do in that first episode, they were trying to hammer through footage that did work and get us to be locked in on the present day Echo concerns. But I gotta say, if you stayed away from Echo, you've missed an excellent fight between Daredevil and Echo. I cannot believe how cool that little fight is. It was my favorite part the first time I watched it, and it's still my favorite part of watching it all the second time. The storytelling from episode 2 to 5 is so smooth. You can tell that there's a complete vision here, and we're watching Echo return to her reservation, return to her family. Now that she's essentially shot Kingpin in the head and ran away from him, now she's in need. She needs a few things that her family has. She goes to her grandfather to help her with her leg. Her leg is her false leg is damaged. She needs a new leg. and she also just needs some help weeding out the Fisk influence in the reservation. And it all ends up exploding into the Fisk men thinking she's just some other element, not realizing she's the same person who shot Fisk in the head, coming to find out that it's her. And then we really have this kind of brewing war between Fisk and Echo. But seeing her journey through trying to manage being this kick-ass assassin, with meeting her family again, with Fisk starting a war, a low, small, it's more of a skirmish than a war, but Fisk starting this whole situation with her. Technically, she starts it by blowing up a train. But seeing that escalation, it's really good. I do not understand negative feedback on the show. I think the action is solid from beginning to end. It's not Daredevil type of action. It's she's got her own fighting style. She's got her own attitude toward the action genre, which is, it's all her. You know what I mean? I mean, she's not Daredevil. She has a fake leg, and she's also a regular human. You know, Daredevil has all these powers in addition to being trained by Stick. So when you see her as a regular human have to figure things out, I think it totally makes sense why the action is the way it is. You know, she's still badass. She's still very cool. She's also approaching every single scene as, I'm a regular human being. Bullets will hit me if I'm not careful, and I just have to be more smart. And even that itself is a clue that gets us to the finale of the show, which I thought was excellent. I don't know Native American culture very much, although I am part Shoshone Native American. But that's just something I've heard about. I don't really know much about it. And I remember my aunt took me to a Native American film festival when I was younger, and I guess it was because that's in our culture. But you know, these movies were very spiritual, and they were very much about culture and history and character, your personal character, and your place in society, and your role, both to yourself and to everybody else. So there's a lot of layers of where do I belong and finding your own path. That's what I got out of these movies. I don't remember even what I watched anymore because I was like 12 or something when it happened. But when we get to the finale, and what's cool is that at least 3 of the episodes start off with a flashback to some Native American historical character, and I don't know if they're actual Native American or if they're from the comics. But you know, the first episode's Chafa. The second episode, I forget the character's name, but you see this sort of sports game played in pre-colonial times between 2 different tribes, and it's essentially what the Olympics was supposed to be. The whole purpose of the Olympics is not just to be some sports events that everyone goes and wastes money on. The purpose of the Olympics, its original origin, was to be a replacement for war. That instead of people going to war, they would play a sports match, and whoever was the best at the sports match, their team, their nation would win and get whatever it was that they wanted. And that was the purpose of the Olympics. And that's actually historically what's been happening in this game. I don't know. Again, I don't know if it's real history or what. But it was such a cool opening, and you see that in this case, you know, she has a different gift. Our historical Native American character it's about cunning, or you know, each character has a different strength. And then when we get to the 3rd episode, there's a different flashback where now we're getting closer to, we're in more of the Wild Wild West times, and you're seeing a young Native American girl being trained. She's the only female protector, and she's being trained to protect her reservation. And it ends up being a situation where at first she's failing and she's dismissed, and then she comes back and saves the day by just she's already a good shot, but by really picking how she battles. And this is all subtext for Echo, because Echo, as we see her take on her different foes, and you do see her get overpowered in episode, I think it is episode 3, where she gets totally overpowered by Wilson Fisk's gang, and she's not going to win. I thought that was very exciting. Like, this show, it really uses the fact that she's a normal human being with no extra superpowers, and if she gets overpowered, it's over. And only by the grace of something happening, I'm not going to say here, does she manage to make it out. So I really, really appreciate how the show takes that seriously, and does it never gives her the easy out. You know, when she gets out of things, there's a reason for it, and it's usually a character reason. And when we get to the final episode, she actually does develop some superpowers that there's hints toward it in the first 4 episodes, but you just don't quite know where it's going. And I thought the 5th episode is so beautiful because it's all character. We're not getting as much action in the 5th episode, but the action we get, it goes right back to what I was talking about, those Native American movies where it's about the spiritual nature of your place in society and who you are and where you come from. It all comes together in a very beautiful way that I thought was very touching. I think Echo is a largely underrated show. I think it's a really fantastic show. And I can understand if you have no knowledge of Native American culture, as I technically don't either. So I don't think it's intentionally alienating, but you have to just kind of accept that, look, I'm looking at a culture I don't know. So this means that don't take that as, oh, I don't want to see this. You should want to see it. It's cool. You're learning about this character. You're learning about her world, and to see, it doesn't make any sense. Like, Marvel just can't win with its own loud, complainer class of viewers that you guys complain about every project and yet you keep watching, right? So I don't really get what's going on here. But it's just be along for the ride. Stop. I think it's my problem too. I have the exact same problem where She-Hulk was bad, Hawkeye was bad. It's like every other show is good. I wouldn't call it superhero fatigue. I think it's shitty storytelling fatigue. If the storytelling is not good, people are not going to check in. It doesn't matter what the genre is. So I think the stress, or not the stress, but the feeling that the previous shows were not hitting the level they should, I think that hurt Echo, because it's more of like your expectation is now dropped. And so you need something that much better to bring you back. But I do feel like Echo was legitimately a superb show from beginning to end. And if you're not checking it out, or if you did try to watch it but you gave up, you got to give it another shot. And please forgive the noise in the background. That's my nephew. If you hear loud noises, it's mostly just my nephew playing around and being a psychopath, whatever he's doing. But yeah, so, as spoiler free as I can get, I thought Echo is an excellent show. And if you haven't given it a shot because of the same exact reasons, being worried about, is this going to be good or not, and you're waiting for those reviews, you're waiting for Rotten Tomatoes to tell you, first of all, I will never ever refer to Rotten Tomatoes. I don't believe in that. I really feel that Rotten Tomatoes is a rotten way to look at movies. Look, if you want to watch it, go watch it. Well, do you really need Rotten Tomatoes to tell you whether you should watch it or not? You don't even know if those reviews and those critic scores were purchased by the company to make you feel that way. You know what I mean? That whole thing was a huge thing online when that came out. That it turned out, movie studios are paying Rotten Tomatoes so that they can have good reviews to make people see. I mean, come on, that's nonsense. If you want to watch it, just go watch it. You don't need someone else's opinion to get you there. Ironically, here's me making my video talking about it. But look, As someone who, I have Hawaiian culture, which no one knows about. People think Hawaii is just some island that people go to vacation for. No, it's a place that has a native people that had a kingdom that was only conquered less than 100 years ago. My grandmother was a child. Okay, my grandmother was like 3 or 4 years old in the 1930s when America took over Hawaii. So, look, I from that perspective as a person from a minority culture that nobody knows or cares about or even thinks really exists anymore, that is kind of my way in with this show where I'm like, oh, other people that nobody talks about because for as much as we hear about certain other people who don't feel represented enough, there's other people who really are not represented at all. And so coming at the show from that angle, it's beautiful from a point of representation and genuine representation. The show doesn't in no way feels like it's pandering or just doing it because it really these people have a story to tell. And for those of you, I should have said this at the beginning, I didn't know the creator of this show her name is, and I hope I'm saying it right, Marion Dyer. She was a writer and executive producer of Better Call Saul. So that was an excellent show. If you like Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, that's the creative mind behind Echo. So seriously, if you have not given this show a chance, but you like that stuff, that's the level of storytelling that's being put into this show. Very talented writer, very talented showrunner. This Echo is a very well done show. And again, I understand if you're coming at it with the point of view of I want that Daredevil level of action, especially because the first episode has Daredevil in it. I say you gotta let that go. I think what makes Echo special, especially in the first 4 episodes, is that she is a regular human with a disability and literally a missing leg. That she's doing all this kick-ass stuff. She's Daredevil, but instead of being blind, she's deaf. And that's, I think, what makes this show exciting, is seeing her have to really, because she doesn't have a superpower yet, to see her have to solve problems like that. And to also see that, hey, when you don't have superpowers, it means you do get cornered. Like I'm pretty sure it's episode 3. And then episode 4 has her flashback relationship with Kingpin, how it began and how it evolved and what their real relationship is. You see, it is an uncle-like relationship, which I relate to because I don't have kids of my own, but I am the uncle to some very wonderful children. And so that's another way in for me to understand Fisk. But seeing her story, and this is storytelling. I know a lot of people say the word plot, but look, fuck plot, okay? Fuck plot. People who say that literally don't even know what they're saying, okay? They don't know what they're saying, all right? From the filmmaker's point of view, from someone who makes this stuff, and just as someone who does have a high standard. I do have a high standard for what I watch, where if it's not on the level, and look, MCU is on the low bar, okay? MCU, all it has to have is a superhero, and I'm in, okay? It's the lowest bar for me, is the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I love the 2003 Daredevil movie. I know it's not a perfect movie, but that's my low bar. I'll show up because there's a superhero in it, okay? And so that's my low bar. So this is the lowest bar I have for myself, is these movies. But I still respect when it's done well. You know what I mean? I have absolute respect for very good storytelling. And what I'm telling you, as spoiler free as it gets, when it comes to Echo, the storytelling is there. It's a really good story told well. And like I said, this is from one of the executive producers of Better Call Saul. Her talent is undeniable. And the cast is wonderful. I really love the entire cast, some of whom I've seen before. The actress who plays the grandmother, Tantu Cardinal, she's been in 133 movies and shows combined. She was in the 1990 Dances with Wolves. She was in Penny Dreadful, which I saw the first season of. Pretty interesting show. She was in Westworld. She was in the show C with Jason Momoa, which I only saw the first episode because I don't have Apple. Graham Greene, who plays the grandfather, was literally in The Last of Us Season 1, The Green Mile, Snow Dogs, Transamerica, which was my first exposure to the whole trans conversation, Twilight. He's in a bunch of the Twilight movies, Longmire, Riverdale, Red Dead Redemption 2, Tulsa King. This dude is in 176 movies and shows combined. And then Chasky Spencer, who plays Echo's cousin. He's a great actor too. He was also in a bunch of the Twilight movies, Longmire. He was even in Jessica Jones as a completely different character. And I know I recognize this guy, but I think I recognize him more from Twilight. Because I think he's only in one episode of Jessica Jones. But the cast is so good. The writing of the story is really top notch. So, as spoiler free as I can get, I am strongly recommending Echo to be part of something you watch, even if you're not interested in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I think you can watch Echo by itself and appreciate what a good piece of storytelling it is. And I did not like Hawkeye, so I would only say if you just want the background to get into Echo, you can watch Hawkeye just to kind of better understand where the character's coming from. But I do think you can essentially watch Echo by itself and have everything you need to know about what's going on with the character. Because that's how I watched it. I watched it having forgotten everything about Hawkeye, except for the fact that she shoots Kingpin in the face and he's supposed to be dead. And then he's not dead in Echo, meaning he survived, but he does go the entire show with a wounded eye. And he does eventually get a surgery, but he's still got the scarring from the events. So how he ends up not looking like that for Daredevil Born Again was part of the reason I checked out Echo. I'm like, wait, what's up with that? And the answer is very cool. I've got to say, especially if you enjoyed Thunderbolts. I think post Thunderbolts, Echo is a totally different show for me. So when you watch Echo and you get to the finale, and I'm talking Thunderbolts here, so if you enjoyed Thunderbolts, I want you to key into that. Very cool. I'm very glad that I went through that. And yeah, I can't really talk about it without spoiling it. So that's my praise for the show. It is a top-notch show. I think Echo in some ways is superior to Daredevil Born Again. I think because it's 5 episodes, it's a very tight story. But also I think it's nice to have a fresh story. It's nice to see a completely different angle. Again, Alaqua Cox as Echo. And this is, by the way, her second role. I didn't realize that. I don't know if she's done theater or anything, but her first television role is Hawkeye. And this is her second role as in the show Echo. That's all her. And she's fantastic. I have to say, I thought she was cool in Hawkeye, but I really, totally fell in love with her in Echo. I thought, damn, she's so good. And I can't believe she has no other credits other than Hawkeye. She's really talented, and she carries this show. And you could tell she did all the working out and got buff and tough and handled the choreography really well. So I gotta say, hats off to the whole cast and crew on what is an excellent season of television that I will gladly put up. I think it's better than WandaVision. I think WandaVision could have benefited from being one episode shorter and maybe had just a little bit less stuff going on with the side characters. But in this case, and I think same with Daredevil Born Again, I think Born Again is a totally solid show that I have a whole episode for. But I think the beauty of Echo is it really does feel like a little movie that's been broken up into 6 parts, but the 6 parts are perfectly segmented chapters, so you can just enjoy each episode on its own as well as appreciating the larger picture. So I think just hats off to everyone who worked on Echo. I think it's a top-notch show. I think it's one of Marvel's best. I think top tier Marvel in terms of solid storytelling. I think for me, it's Iron Man, Captain America, the first ones, Avengers, Endgame and Infinity War, Black Panther, Wakanda Forever. I think these are the stories that there's a story there, even though it may be buried in a lot of action. There's a really good story there, and I'm going to put Echo as part of my sort of top Marvel pieces because it's genuine storytelling. I'm a storyteller. That's what I look for in movies. And just from that perspective alone, I was very impressed with how Echo all came together. And even her name has meaning when you reach the finale and the final action scene. I was like, whoa, okay. That's a very cool, unique superpower that you have. And I don't want to spoil it because I think it's just it hits on so many levels when you see it. I think it's just top-notch stuff. So that's as spoiler free as I can get. If you want to stick around, I'll be getting into the spoilers and talking about some of my favorite aspects of this show. So thank you for watching so far, and I hope I see you for the spoilers.